I'd like to call
Recording
to
in
order
progress.
this meeting of the Westford Finance Committee, Thursday, January 27th at 7 p.m. We have open forum. If there's anybody that has anything they'd like to discuss that's not on our agenda. And I'll actually take this time to just say, if anybody from the town does want to make any comments, you can use the Q&A feature. This is being recorded and everything will be in the public record. If you could mute yourself when you're not talking, just to reduce any feedback. And if the panelists want to speak, if you could use the raise hand function, it makes it a lot easier for me to see who wants to say something. Okay, so I'm going to move on to our 705 agenda item, which is reserve fund transfer request from Paul Fox for the public buildings area. Go ahead, Paul.
Good evening, and thank you for this, so to speak, last minute accommodation. I know we just passed this request forward just a couple of days ago. So this request is for the amount of $6,224 to support a repair at the tech center building. The repair is specifically to the generator, and it's replacing the radiator that's inside the generator. Brief history of how we got to where we are. FM Generator, who is the town generator company, support company, maintenance company, they were on site recently doing a preventative maintenance service, and they noticed an exceptional amount of leaking to the radiator. I myself later with another technician went to the tech center building and also topped off the radiator with coolant, and we noticed that there is some substantial leaking going on, and this is in fact something that needs to be addressed sooner rather than later. So FM Generator provided us with a quote that is before you today for that amount of money, and they were able to squeeze in a window with this committee's approval tonight for this project, where this will be replaced tomorrow before the storm. So it is definitely one of those last minute requests, but there is a significant amount of urgency due to the fact that it is the tech center. It is, a pretty significant centerpiece of the building. It's the unsung hero in the sense that if that goes down without power, we're really lost for a lot of our services. I don't get sticker shocked too often. Nothing really surprises me. This one hurt a little bit. And we did explore alternative options for how we could go about doing it, but every single step of the way kept pointing us back in this direction, where this one just made more sense. The generator itself is approximately 14 years old, so it is a little bit past half of its lifetime, but I think that I'm certainly optimistic that at some point there will be a new future for the tech center building, and this repair will get us all the way to that point for at least this component of it. If we were to seek out alternate ways to get there, I can't say for sure, and we could be back here in a year or two with this exact same position. So with that, I'm happy to answer any additional comments. Again, thank you all for your time and willingness to hear this out.
Thanks, Paul. Anybody have any questions? Joe, Ingrid?
What's the balance of our reserve fund?
So the current balance before the transfer is $105,680.
Anything else? Seeing none, I'll take a motion. Somebody want to make a motion to recommend this, approve this?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Favor, and I'll do a roll call. Tom?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Beth?
Sorry, aye.
I'm gonna have to figure out how to do that.
Yeah, we did that last time too, huh?
I know, Jeff and Beth.
Come
You're
see
similar.
that way. Yeah. Jake?
Aye. Yes.
Hari? Hari? I think it was a yes. Ingrid?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. So unanimous.
Thank you all for your support in passing this. Thank you. Have a nice night, everybody.
Thank you, Paul. Good luck. Okay, so moving on to our 7:10 agenda item, we have Beth Perkins from the Clean Energy and Sustainability Committee here to update us on the Clean Energy and Sustainability Committee's Westford Climate Roadmap and Community Survey and the status of the Sustainability Coordinator. So Beth, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Christina, and thank you to the committee for inviting me here to give the an update on Westford's roadmap to net zero. I'm a member, a co-chair of Westford Climate Action, but I'm here tonight as a member of the Clean Energy and Sustainability Committee, where I'm running the subcommittee that is preparing and will be implementing Westford's roadmap to net zero. So the objectives of tonight's, okay, next slide. So the objectives of the presentation is, I'll go over the status of the roadmap in a couple of slides, but just to let you know what we're trying to accomplish tonight. We are going out and meeting with committees and town staff and community groups to present the roadmap, answer any questions, and very importantly, to gather feedback, because this roadmap is a living document and it will be revised over time. We haven't decided exactly how often those revisions will take place, but we published it in November and we're planning another version in June. So it will be a living document. After we publish that second version, we are going to be seeking the select board endorsement, and we would also like endorsement from the finance committee. Next slide. So some background. I know this looks really wordy, but I thought it was important to include in the presentation the full resolution that was passed at special town meeting in October 2020. So there were two components to that. One was that Westford would commit to take actions to promote clean energy and reduce fossil fuel use. And the second part of it was that the select board would charge a task force with studying and then making recommendations on a climate roadmap. And so the select board charged the Clean Energy and Sustainability Committee with doing that. And that's why we're here tonight. Next slide. So some background. 2021, as I'm sure all of you noticed, was a huge year for climate. It started off in March of 2021 with Massachusetts passing a sweeping climate bill. I believe it was described as the biggest piece of legislation on climate in Massachusetts history. It covers many different areas, and it was followed up in April by Biden's commitments to 100% renewable energy, that's in the grid, by 2035, and also stating that 50% of all vehicles sold by 2030 would be EV. And then in the summer, we had the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change publish their report, which was considered a code red for humanity. Got a lot of attention over the summer, and you know, it was, I've listed a few of the things that were concluded in that report, but most importantly, unequivocal that the recent rise in global average temperatures is driven by humans. So the next slide is the good news. I felt like after that slide we needed some good news, which, and it's one of the reasons that we're here and we're developing these climate roadmaps, is that we believe that it is possible to get to net zero by 2050. And I don't just mean us here in Westford, but at a national, international, national, and local level, that it is possible to do that. One of the reasons for that is the plummeting cost of wind and solar energy. I've put a slide beside it which shows that currently renewable energy is priced lower. It costs less per megawatt hour than fossil fuels. Another piece of good news is that the lifetime cost of electric vehicles is now less than fossil fuels. That's when you consider the maintenance and the fuel use. And there are new electric models of trucks, and we're even looking forward to fire engines and many, heavy duty trucks that will be available, not right now, but will be available in the future as electric vehicles. Electric heat pumps, you'll hear more about in a couple of slides. Those are huge for the way that we're going to be heating our homes and our businesses without fossil fuels. We'll be using heat pumps. They are now viable in all climates and prices, and incentives for purchasing heat pumps are coming available. So the timeline, it was February 21, 2021, when the Clean Energy and Sustainability Committee got its charge to develop the roadmap. We formed a subcommittee to do that, and that's the subcommittee that I'm heading up. We started off with the greenhouse gas inventory, and this isn't just us, it's at a state level, national level. We are really basing all these roadmaps on what the current environment is for the production of greenhouse gases. Where are the most greenhouse gases being generated? So we completed that inventory, and I'll be talking about that in Westford. And at the same time started the development of the roadmap itself, which is a series of recommendations and actions. We did a community survey, and I've connected to the results there. And we reported to the select board as we were charged to do in October 2021, and published the first version of the roadmap in November. The next bullet is where we are right now, community engagement, and you're one of the first committees that we're presenting to. We are going to present to all the major committees and boards in town, and we're going to have general population and Westford climate action presentations also. And again, looking for that select board endorsement, as other towns have done. They've had these plans endorsed by their select board, targeting that for June of 2022. Next slide. The methodology. Some of the local cities and towns in our area were lucky enough to get awards or subsidies to hire consultants to do these roadmaps. We could not do that at the time we needed to move ahead. But what we were lucky enough to have is to have the roadmaps of those other nearby towns that we could use as a base. Also, the roadmap I just talked about, which is the state roadmap, the Massachusetts 2050 decarbonization roadmap. So we use those roadmaps as a base. We didn't reinvent the wheel. We use those as a base for our roadmap. Now, they had to be tweaked because Westford, for instance, doesn't have the sidewalks and the MBTA connections that a town like Arlington does. So we were unable to point transportation in that direction. Also, Westford, we were kind of surprised to find out as a committee, has a very large commercial industrial sector, which a town like Arlington didn't. So we really need to focus on that sector in order to reduce our total emissions. So we did customize based on Westford. Next slide. So the greenhouse gas inventory, two reasons we wanted to do that. One was to establish a baseline that we could measure future progress against. The other was to figure out where are the greatest emissions coming from. The tool that we used in the methodology was developed by the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, and it was the same tool that was used by other nearby towns. So we plugged our data into a tool that was produced by that organization. These are the main results, and the next slide will show you the other, a little bit more detail. The buildings produce 58% of the greenhouse gas emissions, and transportation comes in second at 41%. Now this slide is a little confusing. I would look over at the left where you'll see the subsectors. Passenger vehicles are 38%, residential buildings 29%, commercial industrial, this was the surprise to us, 29%, so just a tad less than our residential buildings. Municipal buildings, 2.4%, and waste at 1.1%. So this is what we're using to orient our plan. We're going to go after the biggest sectors first. So next slide. This is a state chart, which I use to just kind of explain the different areas or how we're focusing the plan. So the first pillar of decarbonization is end use energy. I'm sure many of you have heard the term electrify everything. And because that is a big part of all the plans, other local plans, state, national, and international plans, is we have to electrify everything. We no longer want to use fossil fuels. So that applies to our buildings where we want to use electric heat pumps, our vehicles where we want to switch to electric vehicles. Energy efficiency and flexibility, this is where Mass Save comes in. We're really encouraging everyone in town to get a Mass Save energy audit and to get businesses to do the same, to make sure that envelopes are as tight as possible. It's very important when you're installing electric heat to make sure that you have as efficient a building as possible. Now, many of you, when I said electrify everything, might have said, well, what about, once you plug your car in, you're using the grid, and the grid has, is the electricity in our grid is produced by natural gas, or natural gas is one of the ways that our grid is powered. Well, a parallel effort, equally important, is for us to transition our electric grid to 100% renewables. So that's going to be in New England. Wind is the big hope. We're right now installing a huge wind farm off of the Vineyard Wind. It's going to power 400,000 homes. So we need to get our electricity supply to be 100% renewable. And then when we plug in our car and our heat will also be 100% renewable. Now, even if we do all of that and we do it perfectly, we still aren't going to get to 100%. That's where carbon sequestration comes in, and that's where we removed carbon from the atmosphere. Right now, the major way that's done is with trees. So that's why natural resources are also an important part of the climate roadmap. Next slide. So I'm going to go quickly through the high priority goals in action. I already talked about this. This is greening the grid with 100% renewable energy. And here I'm talking about Westford's grid. This is the electricity we use through the grid here in Westford. So I think, as most of you know, our select board, actually our town, manages electricity, or the contract for our electricity for all our homes and small businesses in town. And that's through the Westford POP program. And the last time we negotiated that contract, we increased renewable energy for all homes and businesses by 10% in that contract. Well, we need to step it up. And every time we renegotiate that contract, we need to increase it. And we're setting a goal of 100% by 2030. The same applies for our town electrical contract. That's the electricity that powers our municipal buildings. We want to also increase the renewables in that to 100%. And partner with Westford businesses to find out where are they getting their electricity and how can they increase renewables in their contracts. Next slide. Improving energy efficiency and reducing greenhouse gas emissions in our buildings. This is what I spoke about earlier, as far as we need to electrify our heating and cooling systems with heat pumps. We need to improve energy efficiency, change our building codes and zoning bylaws to increase efficiency. Some towns you've probably heard about are actually making it illegal to put in new natural gas hookups. The city of Brookline did that and was followed by many other towns. They never actually were able to implement it because there were some problems with the law they wanted to put in. But the cities and towns are still looking to ways that we can ensure that all the new buildings that are built in our town are net zero or 100% electric. We need to advocate at a state level. One of the advocacies that we need to do is to advocate for the net zero zoning, but there are many other advocacy roles we need to take on, and set clearly defined standards for our buildings in town. And I'll talk more about that, our town buildings. I'll talk more about that later.
Can I just, Beth, would you like to take questions as we go? Because I see Jeff has his hand up, or do you want us to wait till the end?
I can go either way. I think it sometimes is quicker if we wait till the end. I just feel, you know, a need to get through it in the 20, 25 minutes. But
I'll
sure.
write my question down in a Word document so I don't forget it.
Thanks.
okay, I should have asked about that at the beginning. I'm sorry. Okay, so next slide. Transition to electric vehicles. So that's more than 40% of Westford's greenhouse gas emissions. So we need to, in here, I should also clarify, when we're encouraging people to purchase electric vehicles or purchase a heat pump, we're not saying to take your current, you know, Toyota, Subaru, perfectly functioning, and get rid of it and replace it with an electric vehicle. We're encouraging people, when the time comes to purchase a new vehicle, consider an electric vehicle. When the time comes to replace your furnace, consider an electric furnace. We're also working with the planning board and others in town to make sure that we have electric vehicle supply equipment, charging stations in optimal locations throughout town. Next slide. Preserving the town's natural resources. So again, we need to, I know Susan Thomas, who many of you know, is working on a lot of these efforts. Right now, we received an MVP grant to do a tree inventory in town, and invasive species inventory that she's working on. And we're also working on ways to reduce solid waste. Next slide. So what I thought I would do, because I'm speaking with the Finance Committee, is to go over the major municipal recommendations, because these are the things I think you may be involved with. So of all those major goals I just went through, there were detailed actions and recommendations in the roadmap. And these were the major municipal recommendations: to increase the percentage of renewable energy in Westford's contract, that will be up in 2023. To implement, and we are well on our way to doing this, implement an energy management performance contract that will do a portfolio-wide assessment of all of our buildings. It's very important to us on the Clean Energy Committee that that will include evaluating every roof in town, all our municipal buildings, for solar, potential to put solar on that roof. And what we're also going to be looking for is when a heating system needs to be replaced, at a minimum, that they would quote the price of replacing any furnaces with electric heat pumps. We would, and that's really what the next item relates to too. Part of the roadmap is that all capital requests for heating and cooling equipment would include electric options. New buildings and major renovations. We're working very closely now with the 51 Main Street project. I know municipal buildings use a relatively small share, or produce a relatively small share, of greenhouse gas emissions in town, but we want to use our municipality to set an example. Picture if you were to see a police vehicle in town that had insignia on it, that it was an electric vehicle. It would inspire you that, yeah, electric vehicles, if they're good enough for the police, they might be good enough for me. And if you see new buildings in town going up with solar panels and electric heating equipment, I think it's an inspiration to the rest of the town. We are also working with Eric to do a inventory of all the vehicles in town and to figure out how we can in the future move towards 100% electric vehicle fleet. And working with the planning board on implementing charging infrastructure. We are also recommending electric school buses, and I had a little back and forth with Christina on this. This isn't one of the things at the top of the list, of course, because electric vehicles are still very, school buses are very new. But certainly over time, I know we have a contract on that, and they're not our school buses, but we would want to work with our contractor to let them know how important it is that we have electric vehicles, and that over time we would replace existing school buses with electric vehicles. And also, you know, a plan to significantly reduce our solid waste. So the next slide is another important recommendation that I think most of you have heard about. We believe it's very important that we have a sustainability coordinator, that because there are so many grants, so many programs out there, especially with the state funding and a lot of new incentives. We went to a climate summit where we heard about all the programs that are out there, and we believe we need somebody dedicated in our town to making sure we get the grants, working with state agencies, working with National Grid, leveraging all the volunteer commitment we have in town, and then measuring and reporting on the roadmap process. We also believe the position, and every other town that's done that says these positions do way more than paying for themselves. So the return on investment is very high. This is the local climate summit we went to that was run by Senator Jamie Eldridge. He went over all the different programs that are out there that we can take advantage of, but his most important statements we felt were about the importance of having a sustainability director. He went as far as saying if there was one single thing we could take away from the climate summit, it would be that, to, you know, get your town to hire a dedicated personnel. So the status of that, it's now the town manager's goal for 2022 that she will explore options for establishing this position. We submitted a request for ARPA funding for the position, and then Eric Heidemann ran into a regional regional grant program, and he's submitting a grant request for that this month. We're looking at partnering at this point with Carlisle, I believe, to hire a regional coordinator. When we presented to the select board a couple nights ago, we said we commend that. We think we should definitely go ahead and go in that direction. But we believe in the long run, we will need a dedicated sustainability coordinator for Westford, and that position would be justifiable. So this we can quickly go through. That's a list you can look at later. It's all of the towns in our area that have already hired such a person. And next slide. Okay. Oh, wow. Thank you very much for holding the questions. And by the way, this isn't the last opportunity. If any of you come up with questions later, you can send them to us or get feedback or questions to us at any point.
Thank you so much, Beth. Does anybody on the committee have any comments or questions? Jeff?
Yeah, just a quick one. You caught my attention when you said that a few towns had tried to regulate some of it, and it seems like a lot of this plan, regardless of intent or, you know, the finances or whatever, it seems like it'll be really hindered if the implementation can't be regulated easily. Can you maybe tell us a little bit about what you know about what impeded that?
It was a state attorney general who said that it wasn't legal. Like, in fact, I think that she said she supported it and she believed it was the right way to go, but that our current state laws wouldn't allow you to set a local zoning law that said that any one form of energy like natural gas is out. So it is possible to do it in a town, I guess, if you have a home rule petition. So the towns like Brookline, I believe Acton also, you might have heard that Acton at their last town meeting just several months ago also passed a resolution, exact same resolution that Brookline tried, to restrict the use of new natural gas connections. And they also at the same time filed a home rule petition, which I guess can legally allow towns to do that. However, we're working with an organization called NEAT, Northeast Energy Partnership. And we are, looking at alternatives because we believe that the better alternative might be to push the state to continue to advocate with the state to write its own legislation as a part of their roadmap that will allow cities and towns on an individual basis, if they want to rule out new natural gas connections, to do that. I don't.
No, that was really good. No, that was a great overview. Thanks. It's intro to me, so that is plenty for an intro answer.
Beth, you had a question?
Hi, I just wondered if you're pursuing any zoning changes, or, any zoning bylaws, or I know, building higher density housing. I've seen, closer to, like regional transportation is, environmentally friendly. So I'm wondering if we're pursuing anything in that regard regarding zoning.
Right. Well, that's why myself, Mike Berlinski, and Eric Heidemann met with this Kai Dunning, who's the representative from NEAT. And this organization has worked with many other towns in the area on zoning and actually also on net zero buildings. And he had a lot of ideas of what we could do and different changes we could make to zoning. So we have invited him to, and you're welcome to come to our meeting of the Clean Energy and Sustainability Committee on February 7th. He will be coming to speak with us about what alternatives can we look at for zoning. And I agree with you, Beth, that housing is a big area to get more dense housing. You're right.
And I also had another question about like charging stations at, apartment complexes, and is there any incentives to, get apartment complexes to install charging stations for when people, do acquire electric vehicles?
Electric vehicles. So one of the interesting aspects of the plan moving forward will be that we aren't only working on municipal buildings, because it's one thing to get our town to put in the charging stations at Abbott School, and the town hall and the library. And it's quite another to encourage businesses and, like you're saying, apartment complexes to do that. But one of the ways that we want to do that, and I think that, we're going to have leverage, is you've probably heard about the amount of money that the state is offering, is giving in terms of incentives for businesses to do that. So we did try and get Robert Walker to consider putting one in at Cornerstone, and we were struck down the first time, but it's not going to be the only time. But we need to wait till some of these incentives to be made official. And I agree, that's huge in apartment complexes.
Tom?
A couple things. Thank you for the presentation. First one, on the charging stations, having them at Abbott, at Town Hall, at the Academy, that's great. Except it does kind of leave out the villages that are not the center of town. So I would hope that there is some future work to get charging stations available to residents in other areas of the town. Second part is in relation to the idea of having some kind of ban eventually on natural gas connections. I live in an area of town that if you sneeze during the winter, the power goes out. And it can be out for a couple hours, can be out for a day. And relying on electric for heat when we're having sub-zero weather is obviously not ideal. And that would also theoretically rule out many natural gas generators. So that's just something that we need to be aware of. And I can also imagine that the reason, or one of the reasons that it's determined to be illegal at this time is that we would be putting ourselves and putting the town in the risk of a monopoly, in that, now we no longer have the option to have an alternate energy source because the town has banned it. And now if we're all electric, the electric companies are able, now I know they have to go through regulations and whatnot, but they're in control. So those are just a couple things that I would be aware of, or kind of keep in mind as we're looking at this, as opposed to kind of banning, but maybe having tax incentives to having energy efficient. That might be a more appealing way to go about it. And the power outages, I know Westford is on rock, plain and simple. We grow rocks in many parts of the town, so we cannot bury our utilities. So we do have aerial lines, and we do want the natural resources of the trees. So we are always going to be at the whim of Mother Nature when it comes to our power grid. So those are just things that we need to keep in mind. And hopefully National Grid will get on board somehow with fortifying the electric grid so that we don't have these concerns. But for me and my neighbors, I do believe that relying 100% on electricity would be not ideal. So thank you.
I understand your concerns.
Ingrid?
It's interesting that you brought up the school buses, because in the last month, have had 2 different meetings with companies that are promoting electric school buses. And there's a lot of changes happening, and I think opportunities. Lexington and Newton both are going that route. And I know Westford's bus contract's up this year. So it might just be something to look at phasing in the option of electric in our bid. Anyway, there's just some interesting stuff out there right now, and other Massachusetts communities are definitely taking advantage of it.
Thank you. Can you tell me what is the length of the school bus contract?
Generally 3 years with options 4 and 5 years.
And it's up this year?
The 3rd year is up. Then the school committee would have to decide if they're going to take the 4th year option or put it out to bid again.
They're in the middle of in the middle of negotiating right now, Beth.
Oh, okay.
They haven't decided. Anybody else have any questions or comments? Hari?
Hey, obviously this is like a very in-depth subject, and of course the committee is doing a pretty good job on making sure that it is palatable to Westford residents. The few things is, I agree with Tom that we cannot depend on electricity as the only source, but I believe if we are looking at a horizon like between now until 30 years from now, the socio-economic and governmental guidelines evolve to a point where there's burden or risks will be removed. But my main question here is finances, right? No matter how I look at it, if I go anywhere outside, a green alternative is at least 20-30% expensive than regular alternative. And same thing with organic, right? There is a differential. As town blessed, this at the time when our town has chartered with the Green Committee, I am assuming that the town has considered all that, saying that, okay, in future, this life might cost more. But it is, let's assume that the town has palatable. So I like to see a future presentation with a little bit of finances. I don't know if you are at a point where you're looking at it or not, but it's never too early to look at it. First thing is, how much are we going to look at on a yearly basis, right? I think there was one thing which we did last year is we did a contract for capital. We pay our regular bill, but they will just put the capital. I think we approved a bill like that. I like to see a little bit same presentation skewed towards what it means for finances.
Yep.
And probably this question the next question goes to Dan and Christina is, let's say if it comes with an additional expense of X amount of dollars, would that go into Prop 2.5 or we would go above? Because 2% year-to-year expenses, slam dunk, we can raise taxes. But if it's 10% year-to-year expenses, what's going to do, right? I'm just a little curious about where that parallel thought / analysis we should do.
So from my perspective on that, I think it's going to be a case-by-case basis, right? Like last year we talked about the hybrid police cruisers, and it was a difference of roughly $9,000. But as Dan showed, we should be able to make up that initial additional expense in, I forget how many years it was, but we would get that back. And I believe Eric is actually applying for grants for next year's hybrid cruisers. So like I said, I think case-by-case basis, I think we can look at these and see what can be done financially. I don't know if Dan, if you have anything else to add to that.
Yeah, I think it saved like the payback on the cruisers was less than 2 years. So, well worth it for those because we do drive them for longer than that. And like the town has a buy recycled policy where, if the cost of recycled materials is not more than 10%, then we buy the recycled materials. So, like Christina said, it's a case-by-case basis on how we move forward with this.
Does anybody else have anything for Beth while she's here? And again, I'm sure we'll have her back. Oh, Tom, did you have another question?
Yeah, sorry. I just realized that. So one of my other concerns with the whole idea of 100% electric fleet is, the charging time and the demand on some of our vehicles. And I know that we're looking 30 years out, but quite honestly, we're going to blink and it's going to be 2050 at this point. So I was wondering, and you may not know this, Beth. I don't know if anyone on the committee knows, but whether or not running biodiesel vehicles has been explored and not, or kind of shifting a little bit towards a biodiesel blend as an alternative for some of our vehicles.
And you might know this, but I thought the diesel that was up at the highway garage was a biodiesel. Do you know?
I'm actually not sure, but we can look into that.
Okay. Anybody else have any last questions? And I'm sure we'll see Beth back again at some point. Okay, thank you so much, Beth. This was great.
Okay, and if anyone thinks of any questions, comments, other things you'd like us to look into, please feel free to send me an email, contact me. I know it's a lot to absorb at once, so.
We'll make sure that everybody has your contact information.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot. So let's move on to our 7:35 agenda item, a discussion regarding the printing and the mailing of the Finance Committee books. So what I wanted to do with this discussion is to just kind of explore the topic again. This was brought to town meeting in 2011 and ended up being dismissed, but it's 11 years later. COVID has definitely propelled some technology adoption by people, and we did start to discuss this in February of 2020 and then everything kind of shut down. So it sort of got put on a back burner and never really got brought up again. So I just wanted to bring it up as a discussion amongst us to see kind of what the temperature of the committee is, if we want to move forward with this or not. Couple things that I wanted to say is that I kind of wanted to frame this a little bit in that, first of all, we're not going to be making a decision tonight. This would have to go to town meeting anyway. Some guardrails are that I think we should still mail something to every household. So all we're talking about is the mailing of the entire FinCom book, which I actually pulled my last year one. It's this that we're talking about, mailing to every household. We would still create the book. It would still be available online in various locations around town, so that people could get a copy if they needed it. And like I said, I think we should still mail something to every household, like a one-pager, like we do for special town meeting, with all the pertinent information, how you can get your copy online, whatever. Some of the reasons why we might want to make the change is more from my standpoint, more from from kind of an environmental perspective. I mean, there is a savings of money. I think it's in the $5,000 range. But over 8,000 of these go out, and we get maybe 500 people showing up at town meeting. But I think that we have to balance that with the fact that you want to be transparent. You want to make sure that everybody has the information that they need. So with all of that, I just kind of want, like I said, just wanted to get a feel of where everyone stood on this. Just a quick discussion. So if anyone wants to give their opinion. Jeff Hillam.
Yeah, I think my opinion is I think there's definitely, at least I have an appetite for some creative solutions. I agree that if anybody had massive problems 11 years ago, or even 2 years ago, I think everyone would admit that we have found other ways to work. And yeah, frankly, I don't even like it. I would rather just have a PDF on an iPad that I can highlight on my own and just keep it, because I don't, I've owned my own business for 7 years that I run out of my home, and I don't own a printer. So I don't even know how to work with paper. So for me, it's not even preferable to have the paper. So, and I know I'm not the only one. So I think there's definitely an appetite for, at least if we get to overuse this word, I think there's definitely possibility for a hybrid model.
Ingrid, go ahead.
No, I agree. I think it's just a lot of wasted paper to mail them to everyone. I would support, though, some sort of request for mailing, if someone, a certain segment of our population would prefer the paper copies, that, you could email in and have town hall send one or something, drop them off. I don't know, but that we think creatively to as much as I agree with Jeff, like less paper is great, but there's still plenty of people that like paper or find it helpful to follow the meeting with the book. So, I think, but I would fully support downsizing the mailing.
Jake.
Yeah, the League of Women Voters of Westford responded to this point, and I liked their proposal in that we send out an abridged version to the community, and this could only be a couple pages rather than the entire booklet. We provide hard copies at places like Town Hall, the library, that if people want to pick it up, they're welcome to, and they can have that full version available to them. And we post it online as well, so that people can pull down a PDF version and highlight or peruse as they want to online. And I think that's a way to reduce the full print that we do right now that goes out to every household. And I think the point that we have such limited attendance to town meeting, it's concerning on its own, but then it also feels like people get the pamphlet and just throw it away, or toss it over, on their counter and say, I'll look at it later, and then it never gets touched again. So to try to prevent that, I think we can be creative in the way that we deliver this, even if it is just high level information to people with, these are the key things you need to know, and that's what gets sent out to everybody. And then having the option to provide the full version in different formats to people that's made available to the town.
Tom.
A couple things. I know that there is a population that still they either don't have email or don't get into email, don't get online. So I would support definitely, again, I hate to say it, but hybrid model, but with an opt-out basically rather than an opt-in, so that we make sure to get everyone the information, at least to start. But then the other thing that I was just realizing is that the booklet is great, but it's not accessible. It won't work for a visually impaired person, whereas having a digital copy of it could allow for screen readers, things like that. That would, so there's that benefit too. And I don't know how much it costs to print right now, but again, if we had it at the key locations, town hall, at the library, at the senior center, and only printed out a limited number, and then, all those buildings have large scale printers available that, it could be printed on demand. I know that's extra demand on staff and whatnot, but that would be another option. So I personally would be in favor of phasing out the full booklet being printed and mailed by default to everyone, or mailed to everyone, I guess. But I think by default it should be mailed to a residence, and have that residence have to opt out, if they so choose to do that. And that would allow us to ensure that we're getting information to people in the way that they would consume it.
Beth?
Thanks to Tom for bringing up the accessibility issue, because that made me think of, like, not only is it not accessible the way that you said, but it's also like language. If someone has a language barrier, if it's online, I don't know if we could have different languages available. I know the school committee, like the newsletters that come from the school district, have different options for languages. So, that could be easier to do online than printing, several different languages if you don't know what people would need. So I think within the parameters that Christina described, where I think it's really important that people receive something with the agenda of the meeting and the time and the place and the location. And, I think that's, but I don't know that it needs to be the entire book. I would support just sending like a 1 or 2 or 3 page mailer, and then having the larger book available around town at other locations. So.
Ari?
Okay, I think we are all agreeing that we don't need the book, right? But I'm not quite there yet. So if I understand last town meeting's opposition for it, I think it's it's 10 years ago. So everybody is more used to paper than email and documents, electronic documents. Now, pretty much you can refinance a house using no paper, right? So that also supports that we should move on. Cost is not an issue. Environmental is an issue, but it's more like a signal that we are environmentally friendly town and we are taking actions to move forward. Here is what town meeting, I have sat in like 5-7 town meetings, and things will come out of the left field and bite you. We have to make sure every answer we are giving is properly worded. Like, for example, I'm not taking shots at you, but if we say accessibility and language translations are available in PDF, a town people can say, okay, you have PDF, don't cut out the book, right? So we have to make a proper case to cut the book out, not exemplifying advantages of the other side. So here is where I am going at. My headed. We should not do this as a lights off approach. We should do this as a phased approach. I like what Tom said, right? Let people opt out, right? Year 1 to let people opt out, right? And year 3 to 5, let people opt in. It's the other way. You need to sign up to get a book as opposed to you need to sign out not to get a book. And year 5, we will print 500 copies and they will be available on town properties like town hall, library, schools, and fire stations. And then after year 7, cut it off. I'm just kind of making random phases and timelines, but what we're doing is we are gradually weaning off, which is 99% more palatable than you're not getting a book next week. I think that's one way to do it, not necessarily the way to do it. Overall, I think I do not like the approach of lights out on year 1 or year 2. We just need to give a little bit more timeline so people can understand that, okay, I have time to think and do this.
Dan, do you have something specifically on that to comment on? Because I'll jump you up before we go on to the other people, if that's the
I
case.
do. Yeah, just on that methodology with the opt-out. Right now, what we do is we have a saturated mailing where everybody in town gets one, and it costs about $1,500. We start sending to specific households, and sending 5 times the amount at least. So I don't think that's really a practical way to do it. But you know, if somebody does request a copy, I think that's a way that we can get them a book if they do need one.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Ingrid.
I don't want to belabor this because I know we have more things to do. I just wanted to say too, this might be the opportunity to really rethink the book a little bit too, you know, with technology that, you know, if we have online versions that have live links and to the background information, you know, we receive huge binders of background information that we cull through to produce this book. But, you know, by linking those documents within the book on an online document might be, you know, great for people who want to do their own research and as well. So I think it's an opportunity. This is not a, you know, let's get this all done before town meeting kind of thing. But I think, you know, if we're going to take a little pause on this, let's look at the whole thing.
I'm sorry, I was just looking to see if somebody else had. Tom, did you have something else?
No, I was just bringing up the fact that Diane Wood has put in the Q&A, just need to consider the impact on town resources for an opt-in and opt-out. So
Right, which I think, yeah, I think Dan kind of covered that part. Okay, and Hari, did you have anything else you wanted to say, or is just your hand still up?
I need to bring it down.
Okay. All right. So I think we'll wrap this up for tonight. It sounds like everyone's, you know, on board, but there's some details and feedback that I think we should probably get. I definitely want to make sure that the town is ready for this because, you know, there could be a large contingent that just is not quite there. We may need to rethink it. So I reached out to a few groups. I'll reach out again, and as we move forward, we can, you know, maybe bring this up again to see if anyone else has input outside of this group. I'm talking like residents. Okay, thank you. Hari, did you have something else?
Yeah, do you want to send a survey out just like we do for other things?
Like to the town?
Yeah, just email or like, remember like we did a survey for like 63rd Main Street and town building. We just kind of
Yeah, not sure I'm there yet. There have been so many surveys lately. I think maybe we can just take the pulse of various groups and kind of get a sense for where they're going to go. I'll reach out to like Jennifer Claro at the senior center, you know, places like that to kind of figure out where to go. And Jake, did you have anything else on this before we move on?
I do, yeah, sorry. I'm against another survey, just to make that clear as well. I think we've gotten plenty of them, and this is something that we should be able to figure out on our own. Do we have any idea what other towns do? And are we able to leverage some of the best practices that we see around Massachusetts?
So a couple things on that. I had asked Dan that same question and he gave me a little bit of information, but I'm also on the Access to Town Meeting committee. And I'm actually leading the group that is surveying other towns and what they do for town meeting. So I've already added that to our list of information gathering. So I'll find out and I'll come back to you guys with what other towns do. So we kind of have that in our back pockets as well.
Super, thanks.
Okay. All right. So I think we're ready to move on to our 7:45 agenda items. We're a little behind. Update on the American Rescue Plan funding and appropriations to date. I just wanted Dan to give us a quick rundown of what the select board has allocated so far, just so that we realize, I mean, we don't have a lot of say here, but it is part of the financial picture and we should be aware of it. So take it away, Dan.
All right, so after every select board meeting, we update this spreadsheet online that shows what's been appropriated, the date, and what the actual projects are. So the first two appropriations were back in September. It was training for the paramedics and EMTs for $100,000, and then of course the recreational enterprise revenue supplemental for $456,000, which allowed us to balance our budget. So the December 14th meeting was quite busy. They had 10 different projects that they allocated, and all were either an emergency or related to COVID. I think we had a capital one in here for the Abbott Elementary ADA stage accessibility, but everything else was related. And also the Blanchard Middle School wastewater treatment plant design for $30,000, and everything else was related to the pandemic. Then on January 11th, they made 3 more appropriations. One was to fund 1.5 years of the community wellness coordinator. Another was to fund a mobile health wellness clinician. And the other was COVID test for Westford residents for $75,000. They're still talking about this appropriation because the laws changed right after that, but so it's still out there as an appropriation at this point for the Board of Health. And then finally, at their meeting on Tuesday night, they appropriated $237,000 for the construction of the fire training tower. This is part of that 35 Town Farm Road project where we had Choice Inc. Bid on that to build affordable housing. But one of the conditions was to relocate the fire training tower. It's actually being relocated to 60 Forge Village Road on Water Department land. This is a portion of the cost. The rest of the cost is scheduled to be $580,000 to be appropriated from Capital Stabilization Fund and at the town meeting. And then when Choice actually closes on the property, we want to put the money back in the Capital Stabilization at that time. So overall, we have 16 projects out here totaling just over 1.3 million. Our current balance right now is just under 2.4 million, but this summer we get in the second half of that, the ARPA funding of 3.7. So really we have $6,343,000 remaining for projects. Now I'm happy to answer any questions.
Anybody? Okay. So moving on to boards and committee updates. Capital Planning Committee, that's Heather and myself. We did, hey, Dan, can you stop sharing your screen? Thank you. I want to get to my notes for myself here. So capital planning, capital planning voted at the last meeting on January 21st to appropriate several different things. Free cash, 1.6 million out of free cash for kind of the typical, I'm not going to go through every little thing, but typical computers, some vehicles, school feasibility study, sidewalks in various design and construction phases, nothing super out of the ordinary there. One thing I did want to point out was the school, the courier vehicle that they're going to be replacing is going to be all electric. So that'll be kind of cool. I'm excited about that. The library expansion is probably going to be coming up sooner than we thought. So just sort of keep that in mind. Capital will be in the loop on that, obviously. So that will come before us, in the course of the budget. It's probably not going to come up this time though. Jeff, did you have something? Yeah.
Yeah. Though I'm not like a total expert on it. It is like worth noting, if you didn't know, that once the library comes up, it's a one-time shot. And if they miss it, they miss the state grant. So just so everybody sticks it in their back pocket that if we want the library to be expanded to serve a bigger population in the town, it's really a one-time shot.
Right. And then there's bonding. Right now, when I looked at my notes a few days ago, I have us bonding $11.9 million, but I think that has changed because CPC is recommending some stuff. So I think that number is a little different, but 51 Main Street is the big ticket item there, like 9.2 million. And then there were some other things, or maybe those were going to ARPA. Anyway, so that's kind of it on capital. Town and School Safety Task Force is Dennis. He and I spoke, and the TSSTF did recommend the Community Wellness Coordinator position that Dan discussed being funded for 18 months through ARPA. That will come back again at some point to see what happens after the 18 months. Dennis also mentioned that they were discussing the hiring of additional SROs in schools, the school resource officers, but they want to go to DEI. There's still a lot of discussion before they make any sort of recommendation. So that's just kind of something to watch out for. Okay, next, school committee. If Hari on the hook for that one.
Yeah, I don't have any updates. I think mainly because I did not attend the last few. Especially, I kind of had it on the calendar for the budget one, but something else came up. I will go watch the recordings and then talk to them if they need to be, and report back next meeting.
Okay. Permanent Town Building Committee, I have is Jeff Hillam.
Yep, absolutely. And I don't have anything, but I will figure it out.
Okay. And do you want to just do Community Preservation Committee as well? Because you're on that one also.
I will ditto my last comment.
Okay, sounds good. The Recreation Feasibility Study is Heather, and I spoke to her. This one, actually, Dan, I think she was just on the committee to hire the consultant. So this may be sort of moot at this point, but I'm not sure. But she did say that, they have hired a consultant. She reached out to Chris Barrett. The committee, they hired a consultant, and they are doing some info sessions and focus groups and kind of moving along. Energy performance contract. Jake, I think you were up on that one.
Yeah, so I was on the committee to help select the energy company that we would contract with over the next several years. So this goes back to one of the major recommendations that Beth Perkins spoke about earlier tonight in regards to the energy management performance contracts to help reach our net zero goals. So think of this as like a really big construction project with a lot of sort of modules wrapped around it. And we're selecting who we want as a collaborative partner to help implement those projects that the town chooses. It's a long-term relationship to design and build. We'll be working with them over the next couple decades to ensure realized savings for the town. There's an annual process where they must demonstrate the savings that that they have been able to implement, and it is through units of energy savings rather than cost, since they don't have any influence over the energy markets. They can't guarantee any cost savings for us, so we need to measure it in terms of energy. So the process that we followed is we solicited RFQs from 10 OEMs and engineering companies. We evaluated and ranked 7 of them through a pretty comprehensive scoring matrix that we had brought on a consultant to help us usher in this process and navigate us through it. We completed 4 interviews of the 7 that were the highest ranked during Christmas week, and then selected 1 that was recommended to the select board. So the final company that we had recommended is Amoresco out of Framingham, Massachusetts. And they have a lot of experience with local towns and revisiting the energy goals for municipal buildings, for schools, things along those lines. So we were most comfortable with them, and that was the recommendation that we had made to the select board. And that's the update on that side.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
I think the only other thing is the health insurance trust, but we're gonna hold off on that. They're gonna be, I think, going before the select board soon to update them, and so we'll get the update then. Next on the agenda is approval of minutes, the January 5th, 2022 minutes. Does anybody have any comments or anything on that? If not, could I have a motion to approve? Anybody?
So moved.
Thanks. And second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor, Tom,
Aye.
Jeff Hillam?
I need to abstain. I wasn't there.
Okay. Hari,
Aye.
Jake,
Aye.
Beth,
Aye.
Ingrid,
Aye.
and I'm an aye. So those pass. So the only thing is our future meetings. The next one is February 8th, where Jody's going to give the, present the budget. Dan, I assume our budget books will be ready sometime around that date as well.
Yep, if you want a printed version of it, please let me know. Otherwise, everything will be a PDF, but we're happy to print one out if somebody actually wants one, so.
That's true. We should, yeah, we should actually opt in for the printing, I think, this
Yeah.
year. Huh?
We'll try the opt-in option, okay.
I think we can do that with 9 of us. All right. Sounds good. And then the rest of our schedule is kind of the same. I think it's in the packet. Yep, Dan?
So just one update on this timeline. We switched around the schedule just a little bit. All the dates are the same, but we switched the capital presentation, revenue presentation to March 3rd. And those departments that were supposed to present then have been moved to April 7th, just due to a conflict, so.
Okay. I think we are adjourned. Oh, nope, Ingrid.
No, I just had a quick question about the questions. Just, so we're doing all the school questions by the 18th of February?
So
Maybe we have a school budget done? or-
we might need to revisit that.
Okay.
I was listening to the subcommittee meeting the other day, and I'm still a little confused on exactly when they're going to vote. So I'm going to check on that. And yeah, we may need to adjust that date if they don't have a real solid budget for us to even ask questions on.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it makes sense to let them, put together what they need to do first before we start picking things
Right.
apart.
Right. So yeah, just hold off on that for now, but we'll get the answers before, before we need to get it into them. Anything else? Okay, somebody make a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
Tom,
Aye.
Jeff Hillam,
Aye.
Ari,
Aye.
Jake,
Aye.
Beth,
Aye.
Ingrid,
aye,
and I'm an aye. Thanks, everyone. Good night.
aye, thank you.
Everyone, aye.
Aye,
Good luck
thank
for the
you.
weekend. You're gonna have a lot of snow.
Have fun in the snow.
Yeah.